The transport ship Vindication groaned through hyperspace, its hull still scarred from the battle at Kepler 442b. Marcus Chun pressed his palm against the cold metal wall and felt the vibrations of the dying engines. 3 days since the bloodbath. 3 days since he watched his squad get vaporized by alien plasma cannons. 3 days since Command decided he was a hero. He wasn't a hero. Heroes didn't survive by hiding behind crystalline formations while their friends screamed. Chun! The voice cut through his thoughts like a laser blade. Captain Reeves strutted down the narrow corridor, his uniform crisp despite the chaos they'd escaped. Ready for your reward ceremony? Marcus straightened, muscle memory forcing him into attention. Sir, I don't need. Bullshit. Reeves clapped a hand on his shoulder, the gesture meant to be friendly but carrying the weight of authority. You held that position for 6 hours against impossible odds. You called in the coordinates that let us glass their command center. The least we can do is show our appreciation. The captain's smile never reached his eyes. Nothing about Reeves ever seemed genuine, from his perfectly styled hair to his collection of alien teeth worn as a necklace. But he was effective, and in this war, effectiveness mattered more than humanity. They walked through the ship's belly, past sleeping quarters packed with traumatized soldiers and medical bays overflowing with the wounded. The Vindication had limped away from Kepler 442b with barely half its crew intact. Every face Marcus passed carried the same hollow expression, the look of people who'd seen too much and felt too little. Tell me again why we're fighting, Marcus said quietly. Reeves glanced at him sharply. Expansion. Resources. The survival of our species. You know this, soldier. Do I? Marcus stopped walking. Because from where I was lying in that crater, watching Kowalski get torn apart by those crystal spiders, it looked a lot like slaughter. The captain's hand moved to his sidearm, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. Careful, Chin. Victory doesn't make you invulnerable to charges of sedition. They continued in silence until they reached the detention level. The air here was thick with recycled atmosphere and something else. Fear, maybe, or despair. The corridor stretched ahead of them, lined with energy barriers that hummed with deadly current. Behind each barrier, shadows moved in the artificial twilight. Prisoners of war, Reeves explained, though Marcus hadn't asked. We took 17 alive from the surface. Most are being transferred to the research stations, but Command decided to keep a few special ones for morale purposes. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Morale purposes? They stopped in front of 2 adjacent cells. The barriers flickered briefly, revealing the occupants within. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The first prisoner was tall and elegant, her skin a pale blue-green that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light. Gills fluttered along her neck, opening and closing in a rhythm that suggested distress. Her eyes were large and dark, filled with an intelligence that made Marcus uncomfortable. She wore the remnants of what had once been armor, now hanging in tatters around her muscular frame. Heavy energy shackles bound her wrists and ankles. The second prisoner was smaller, more human in proportion, but her skin had a crystalline quality that reflected the cell's lighting in prismatic patterns. Her hair was white as starlight, and when she looked up at their approach, Marcus saw that her eyes were completely silver. No iris, no pupil, just mirrors that seemed to reflect more than they should. She too was shackled, but these restraints pulsed with a different energy, something that made the air around her shimmer with heat distortion. Beautiful, aren't they? Reeves's voice carried an edge that made Marcus's skin crawl. The blue one is Nereid aquatic species, incredible warriors. Killed 12 of our boys before we brought her down. The crystalline beauty is from the Veil colonies. Telepathic healers, or so our xenobiologists tell us. Marcus stared at the 2 prisoners, feeling the weight of their gazes. The Nereid's expression was defiant, filled with barely contained rage. The Veil woman's face was unreadable, but something in those silver eyes suggested she was listening to more than just their conversation. Command wants to reward your heroism, Reeves continued. Pick one. She's yours for the duration of the journey home. Do whatever you want with her. No questions asked, no reports filed. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Around them, Other soldiers had gathered, drawn by the promise of entertainment. Their faces eager, hungry. Marcus recognized some of them, good men once. Men who'd been twisted by this endless war into something else. "Choose," Reeves ordered. Marcus looked at the two prisoners again. The Nereid's gills fluttered faster now, and he could see the tension in her muscles as she prepared for whatever came next. The Veil woman remained motionless, but those silver eyes seemed to bore into his soul. This was his reward. This was what heroism bought in humanity's grand crusade across the stars. Marcus made his choice. "I can't," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. The corridor fell silent except for the hum of energy barriers and the ship's laboring engines. Captain Reeves's expression shifted from expectation to confusion to something darker. "Excuse me?" Marcus squared his shoulders, meeting his captain's stare. "I said I can't. I won't choose." Murmurs rippled through the gathered soldiers. Someone laughed nervously. Reeves stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Chun, you're making a serious mistake. This is a reward, not a request. Pick one, or I'll pick for you. Then you'll be doing it without my participation." Marcus felt something crystallize inside him, a resolve he hadn't known he possessed. "Sir." The captain's face flushed red. His hand moved to his sidearm again, this time with clear intent. Insubordination. Refusal to accept lawful orders. "You're looking at a court-martial soldier. For refusing to participate in rape?" The word hung in the air like poison. Several soldiers shifted uncomfortably, but none moved to support him. "Let me save the tribunal sometime. I'm guilty as charged." Reeves drew his weapon, the plasma charge whining as it powered up. "You've lost your mind. The stress has broken you." "Maybe." Marcus glanced at the two prisoners. The Nereid was watching him with something that might have been surprise. The Veil woman's silver eyes remained unreadable. "Or maybe I finally remembered what we're supposed to be fighting for. We're fighting for humanity's survival." Reeves's voice echoed off the metal walls. "These things would wipe us out without a second thought if they had the chance. They're not human, Chen. They're not even people." Marcus looked at the Nereid again. She was breathing heavily, her gills working overtime in the thin atmosphere. Fear and defiance warred in her dark eyes, but underneath it all, he saw something unmistakably familiar. The same look he'd seen in mirrors after every battle, in the faces of his dying squad mates, in the eyes of every human who'd stared death in the face and found themselves still breathing. The look of someone who wanted to live. "They're people," he said quietly. "Different from us, but people. And we've made ourselves into monsters." Reeves raised his weapon, aiming it at Marcus's chest. "Last chance, soldier. Choose one, or I'll put you down right here." The energy barriers flickered again, and Marcus noticed something strange. The crystalline patterns in the Veil woman's skin were shifting, growing brighter. The air around her cell shimmered more intensely, and he could feel heat radiating from the containment field. She was doing something. "Sir," one of the soldiers spoke up nervously. "The Veil prisoner. Something's wrong with her cell." Reeves glanced over, his weapon still trained on Marcus. The Veil woman had risen to her feet, her silver eyes now glowing with an inner light. The shackles around her wrists and ankles pulsed frantically, their energy fields fluctuating. "Sedate her," Reeves barked, but it was too late. The Veil woman pressed her palms together, and Marcus felt something brush against his mind. Not intrusive, not violent, just a gentle touch that carried with it an overwhelming sense of gratitude and something else. "Trust me," a voice whispered in his thoughts. The energy barriers failed simultaneously, not just around the two special cells, but throughout the entire detention level. Alarms shrieked as dozens of alien prisoners suddenly found themselves free of their cages. Chaos erupted. The corridor filled with the sounds of alien battle cries, plasma fire, and human screams. The Nereid moved like liquid death, her powerful limbs propelling her toward the nearest guard with frightening speed. Her hands, no longer bound, revealed retractable claws that gleamed like surgical steel. The Veil woman remained motionless for a moment, her glowing eyes fixed on Marcus. Then she smiled, her expression so purely human in its warmth that it took his breath away. You chose correctly, her voice echoed in his mind. Now we choose you. Marcus felt a hand grab his arm. The Nereid had dispatched 3 guards in the time it took him to blink, and now she was pulling him toward the detention level's exit. Her grip was incredibly strong, but careful not to hurt him. Move, she hissed, her voice heavily accented but perfectly understandable. Your friends will recover quickly. Why are you helping me? Marcus stumbled after her, plasma bolts searing the air around them. Because you helped us, she replied simply. They reached the corridor junction where the Veil woman waited, her crystalline skin now blazing with contained energy. Behind them, Captain Reeves was shouting orders, trying to organize his scattered troops. The other escaped prisoners had scattered throughout the ship, turning the Vindication into a war zone. Can you get us to the shuttle bay? The Veil woman asked, her mental voice calm despite the chaos. Marcus nodded, his soldiers' training kicking in despite everything. This way, but they'll have sealed the launch tubes by now. The Nereid bared her teeth in what might have been a smile. Then we'll make new ones. They ran through corridors filled with emergency lighting and the sounds of distant battle. Marcus's mind raced, trying to process what had happened. He'd refused an order, triggered a prison break, and was now fleeing with 2 alien fugitives through a ship full of people who wanted to kill him. It should have terrified him. Instead, for the first time in months, he felt truly alive. The shuttle bay doors were sealed tight, exactly as Marcus had predicted. Emergency lights bathed the cavernous space in pulsing red, and the automated defense systems tracked their movement with mechanical precision. 3 shuttles sat in their launch cradles, but without command authorization, they might as well have been decorative sculptures. There, Marcus pointed to the smallest vessel. Short-range reconnaissance shuttle. If we can get it powered up. His words were cut off by the whine of plasma cannons charging. The bay's defensive turrets had locked onto them, their targeting systems painting crimson dots across their bodies. The Nereid. She'd told him her name was Zara during their desperate flight through the ship's corridors. Stepped forward with fluid grace. I can handle the weapons. Can you start the ship? Not without authorization codes, Marcus replied. But even as he spoke, he felt the Veil woman's presence in his mind again. I can help with that. Lix's mental voice was accompanied by a warm sensation, like sunlight on his thoughts. But I need physical contact with the ship systems. The defense turrets opened fire. Plasma bolts seared the air where they'd been standing, but Zara moved like water given form, her body flowing between the deadly beams with inhuman grace. Her people, Marcus realized, had evolved in an environment where predators struck with lightning speed. Their reflexes were far beyond human capability. She reached the nearest turret in 3 bounds, her claws extending as she leaped. The metal shrieked as she tore through its housing, sparks cascading around her like a waterfall of stars. The weapon's tracking system stuttered and died. Marcus and Lixa ran for the shuttle while Zara systematically dismantled the bay's defenses. The crystalline woman's skin pulsed with contained energy, each step leaving small scorch marks on the deck plating. Your species, she said aloud for the first time, her voice carrying a musical quality that resonated in his bones. You're not all like the others. Some of us remember who we used to be, Marcus replied, reaching the shuttle's access panel. Though not many. He pressed his palm against the biometric scanner, knowing it would deny him access. Red lights flashed, and the computer's voice echoed in the bay. Access denied. Unauthorized personnel. Lixa placed her hand over his, and Marcus felt electricity arc between their skin. Her touch was warm, almost feverish, and where their flesh met, her crystalline patterns seemed to flow into his palm like living tattoos. The scanner's red light shifted to amber, then green. Access granted. Welcome aboard, Captain Chun. Captain. Marcus stared at the display in confusion. I may have adjusted your security clearance, Lixa said with something that sounded almost like embarrassment. Your computer systems are remarkably simple to navigate once you understand their pathways. The shuttle's ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss. Behind them, Zara finished destroying the last turret and sprinted toward them, her powerful legs eating up the distance in seconds. But as they reached the shuttle's entrance, the bay doors burst open and armed soldiers poured in. Captain Reeves led the charge, his face twisted with rage. "There! Kill the aliens, but I want Chen alive!" Plasma fire erupted across the bay. Marcus pushed Lixa toward the shuttle's interior while Zara whirled to face their pursuers. The Nereid warrior was magnificent in her fury, her movements a deadly dance that seemed to bend light around her. But there were too many soldiers, too many weapons. "Get to the pilot's seat," Zara shouted over the sound of energy weapons. "I'll buy you time." Marcus hesitated. They'd saved him, risked everything to include him in their escape, and now he was supposed to abandon one of them? "Go!" Zara's voice carried absolute authority. A plasma bolt caught her shoulder, spinning her around, but she kept fighting. Blue-green blood streaked down her arm. Marcus ran for the cockpit, Lixa close behind him. His hands moved over the controls with muscle memory, initiating the startup sequence that would bring the shuttle's engines online. But even with Lixa's security override, the process would take precious minutes they didn't have. "The launch bay doors," he said desperately. "They're still sealed. Even if we get airborne." "Leave those to me," Lixa interrupted. She pressed both palms against the shuttle's primary console, and her entire body began to glow. The crystalline patterns in her skin shifted and flowed like living circuitry, and Marcus felt the ship's systems respond to her touch in ways they'd never been designed for. Through the cockpit window, he watched Zara fighting a retreat toward the shuttle. She was incredible, her natural weapons and inhuman speed making her nearly untouchable, but the soldiers were adapting to her patterns. More blood stained her skin, and her movements were becoming fractionally slower. The shuttle's engines roared to life just as Zara reached the ramp. She leaped aboard, slamming the emergency close button with her fist. Plasma bolts scarred the hull as the ramp sealed shut. "We're trapped," Marcus said, staring at the massive bay doors. "Those are designed to withstand ship-to-ship weapons. This shuttle doesn't have the firepower to." The bay doors exploded outward in a cascade of twisted metal and superheated gas. Through the new opening, Marcus could see the star-filled void of space beckoning like a promise of freedom. Lixa collapsed against the console, her skin dimming until the crystalline patterns were barely visible. "Sometimes," she whispered, "the simplest solutions are the most effective." I simply convinced the door's structural integrity fields that they were no longer necessary. Marcus engaged the thrusters, and the shuttle shot through the breach into open space. Behind them, the Vindication grew smaller, its hull venting atmosphere through the massive hole where the shuttle bay doors had been. They were free, but as Marcus looked at his unlikely companions, Zara bleeding from multiple wounds, Lixa barely conscious from her exertions, he realized their escape was only the beginning. In the vast emptiness of space, three fugitives from a war they no longer believed in faced an uncertain future. And somewhere in that uncertainty, the seeds of something unprecedented began to take root. The stolen shuttle drifted through the asteroid field of the Proxima Centauri system, its engines powered down to avoid detection. 3 days had passed since their escape from the Vindication, and Marcus was beginning to understand the full scope of what they'd done. "The entire detention level," he said, reviewing the intercepted communications on the shuttle scanner. 37 prisoners escaped. They're calling it the worst security breach in fleet history. Zara looked up from where she was tending to her wounds with supplies from the shuttle's medical kit. The Nereid's natural healing abilities were remarkable. Injuries that would have crippled a human were already showing signs of recovery. "Good. Perhaps some of my people will find their way home. Or perhaps they'll be hunted down like animals," Marcus replied grimly. "The fleet's mobilizing everything they have. Search and destroy orders for all escaped prisoners." Lixa remained silent, conserving her strength after the massive energy expenditure of their escape. But Marcus could feel her presence in his mind, a warm constant that had become strangely comforting. Through their growing mental connection, he sensed her deep sadness at the news. "There's something else," Marcus continued, his voice heavy. Command is spinning this as a terrorist attack. They're saying I was compromised, possibly telepathically controlled. My family. He swallowed hard. They've declared me dead. Military honors. Closed casket ceremony. My sister thinks I died a hero. Better than the truth? Zara asked gently. I don't know anymore. Marcus stared out at the spinning rocks that surrounded them, each one a potential shelter or a tomb. What are we supposed to do now? We can't go back to human space, they'll execute us on sight. And I can't exactly blend in among your people. You assume, Lixa said aloud, her voice stronger now, that returning to our old lives is the only option. She moved to the shuttle's central console, her crystalline skin beginning to pulse with renewed energy. As her hands touched the controls, holographic displays flickered to life around them, showing star charts and communication networks that Marcus had never seen before. What is this? He breathed. A network, Lixa explained. Hidden pathways between worlds, maintained by those who refuse to accept that this war is inevitable. The holographic display shifted, revealing a complex web of connections spanning dozens of star systems. Some were human colonies, others belonged to species Marcus didn't recognize. All were marked with symbols that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The Sanctuary Network, Zara said, recognition dawning in her dark eyes. I thought it was a myth. Many myths contain more truth than official histories, Lixa replied. There are those among all our species who believe this conflict serves only the powerful, those who profit from fear and hatred. We've been building something different. Marcus studied the star chart, his military training automatically analyzing strategic positions and supply routes. These are all systems outside the main conflict zones, places where the war hasn't reached yet, or places where it's been deliberately avoided, Lixa corrected. Worlds where humans and non-humans work together, trade together, live together. Small communities, but growing. That's impossible, Marcus protested. The xenobiology reports, the cultural incompatibility studies, written by people who benefit from perpetual conflict. Zara interrupted. Tell me, in the time you've spent with us, have you found us so alien? Marcus considered this. Zara's fierce protectiveness of those she cared about, her warrior's code of honor. These weren't alien concepts. They were deeply familiar. And Lixa's gentle wisdom, her capacity for sacrifice and healing. He'd seen the same qualities in the best of humanity. The war, he said slowly, it's not really about expansion or resources, is it? Control, Lixa confirmed. Fear is an excellent tool for maintaining power. As long as humans fear us, and we fear humans, those in command of both sides remain essential. The console chimed softly, and new data cascaded across the displays. Lixa's expression grew troubled as she absorbed the information. What is it? Marcus asked. News from the network. The fleet's response to our escape has been extreme. They're not just hunting escaped prisoners. They're targeting any system suspected of harboring alien sympathizers. Her voice carried profound sadness. 3 colonies have been glassed in the past day. Millions dead. The weight of their actions hit Marcus like a physical blow. Because of us. Because of what we did. No, Zara said firmly. Because of what they chose to do. You cannot take responsibility for the evil others commit in response to your righteousness. But Marcus could see the doubt in her eyes, the same guilt that was eating at him. How many innocents would die because 3 people had chosen conscience over orders? There's a safe haven, Lixa said quietly. 3 days' journey from here. A world called Haven's Rest, jointly colonized by humans and several non-human species. They've managed to remain neutral in the conflict. And if we lead the fleet there? Marcus asked. Then we'll have doomed thousands more, Zara finished. They sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside the shuttle, the asteroids continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the moral struggles of the small beings hiding among them. Finally, Marcus spoke. There's another option. Both women looked at him expectfully. We don't run, he said. We fight back. But not the way the military taught us. We expose the truth. Show people that this war is a lie built on lies. How? Zara asked. Marcus pulled up the shuttle's communication array. I still have my military access codes. Lixa enhanced my security clearance during our escape. If we can get close enough to a fleet communication relay, I might be able to access their command networks. That's suicide, Zara protested. They'll be watching for exactly that kind of infiltration. Maybe. But if we can broadcast the real intelligence reports, the ones that show successful cooperation between species, the economic analyses that prove this war is bankrupting both sides while enriching military contractors, maybe we can wake people up. Lixa placed her hand on his shoulder, and Marcus felt her thoughts intertwining with his own. Through their connection, he sensed her deep fear, but also something stronger, hope. It's a chance, she said simply. Perhaps the only one we'll get. Marcus plotted a course toward the nearest communication relay, knowing they were likely flying toward their deaths. But for the first time since the war began, he felt like he was fighting for something worth dying for. The communication relay station Hermes, 7 hung in the void like a metallic spider, its sensor arrays and transmission dishes spreading in all directions. It was smaller than Marcus had expected, crewed by perhaps 50 personnel, but its position at the junction of 3 major hyperspace routes made it a critical node in the fleet's communication network. Security's minimal, he observed, studying the scanner readings. 2 patrol fighters, basic defensive grid. They're not expecting trouble this far from the front lines. Because we're already behind their lines, Zara pointed out grimly. She'd spent the journey crafting improvised weapons from the shuttle's spare parts, her natural engineering skills proving as formidable as her combat abilities. This is the heart of human space. They think they're safe here. Lixa sat in meditative silence, her crystalline skin pulsing with stored energy. Through their mental connection, Marcus could feel her preparing for what was to come. Not just the physical demands of infiltration, but the emotional cost of what they planned to reveal. The truth will hurt many people, she said aloud. Families who've lost loved ones. Soldiers who've committed atrocities believing they were protecting humanity. Are we right to shatter their certainties? The truth is the truth, Marcus replied, though he felt the weight of her concerns. People deserve to make their choices based on reality, not propaganda. He'd spent hours reviewing the classified files they'd stolen during their escape, and each revelation had been more damning than the last. Peace negotiations sabotaged by both sides' military leadership. False flag operations designed to prolong the conflict. Evidence of successful joint colonies systematically destroyed to maintain the illusion of incompatibility. The worst discovery had been the casualty reports. Real numbers showing that the war was killing far more civilians than combatants, with entire species being pushed toward extinction not by enemy action, but by their own government's scorched earth policies. Incoming transmission, the shuttle's computer announced. The view screen flickered to life, revealing Captain Reeves' scarred face. Behind him, Marcus could see the bridge of a heavy cruiser. They'd been hunting with serious firepower. Marcus Chen, Reeves said, his voice carrying false warmth. You've led us quite a chase. Time to come home, son. Home to what? Marcus replied. A court-martial and execution? That depends entirely on your cooperation. The Admiralty is prepared to be lenient if you help us understand how these creatures compromised you. Telepathic manipulation isn't your fault, soldier. Zara moved into view of the camera, her predatory grace unmistakable even in the confined space of the shuttle. He wasn't manipulated, human. He chose. Reeves' expression hardened. Ah, the Nereid bitch. We've been studying your species' biology. Did you know your pain receptors are 3 times more sensitive than ours? The research team is very interested in exploring that. Try me, Zara growled. But Marcus saw her hands tremble slightly. She'd endured torture before. The scars on her body told that story, and the memory still haunted her. Enough, Marcus said. What do you want, Reeves? Surrender. Now, return our stolen property, submit to medical examination, and I guarantee you'll live to see trial. And if we refuse? Reeves smiled, and the expression was colder than deep space. Then we glass this entire sector. Every asteroid, every piece of debris. Your new friends will die screaming in vacuum, and you'll die knowing you killed them." The transmission ended, leaving them in heavy silence. Through the shuttle sensors, Marcus could see 3 heavy cruisers emerging from hyperspace, their weapon systems already charging. "He's not bluffing," Marcus said quietly. "Reeves doesn't make threats he won't follow through on." "Then we'd better work fast," Lixa replied, rising from her meditation. Her skin blazed with contained energy, brighter than Marcus had ever seen it. "How long do you need to access their communication network?" Marcus ran calculations in his head. 10 minutes to slice into their security, another 5 to upload the files and initiate broadcast. "But I need to be connected directly to their main communication array." Zara checked her improvised weapons. "I can get you there. How long can you hold off 3 cruisers?" "Against those odds?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Maybe 30 seconds. Then we make those seconds count," Lixa said. She moved to the shuttle's engineering console, her hands dancing across controls that began to glow under her touch. "I can overload our reactor, create enough electromagnetic interference to disrupt their targeting systems temporarily. But the explosion will destroy us as well." The reality of their situation settled over them like a shroud. They were going to die here, in the void between stars, fighting to reveal truths that might not even matter. The war machine would grind on, fed by hatred and fear, while their bodies dispersed into cosmic dust. But in that moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since the early days of the conflict. Peace. Not the absence of fear, terror still clawed at his guts, but the deep satisfaction of knowing he was finally fighting for something pure. "There's another way," he said suddenly. "What if we don't run from the cruisers? What if we broadcast from here, use the relay station's own communication array against them? A direct assault?" Zara's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Against 50 defenders and whatever automated systems they have?" "Not an assault," Marcus corrected. "A rescue." He pulled up the station's personnel files, highlighting civilian contractors and support staff. "Look at this. Half the people on that station aren't military. They're communications technicians, engineers, maintenance crews. People who signed up to keep the infrastructure running, not to fight a war." "You think they'll help us?" Lixa asked. "I think they deserve the same choice we had. The chance to see the truth and decide for themselves what they want to do about it." The first energy blasts from the approaching cruisers lit up space around them, still distant but closing fast. Marcus engaged the shuttle's engines, setting course for the relay station. "Last chance to reconsider," he told his companions. Zara bared her teeth in a warrior's grin. "I've been looking for a good death since this war started. This will do." Lixa's mental touch was warm with affection and resolve. "Then let's give them something to remember." The shuttle accelerated toward Hermes 7, carrying 3 unlikely allies toward their final battle. The docking bay of Hermes 7 erupted in chaos as their shuttle touched down. Emergency alarms shrieked through the station's corridors while automated defense systems tried to lock onto targets that moved too fast and fought too smart to be contained. Marcus led the way through the station's maintenance tunnels, his military training allowing him to navigate the complex layout while Zara and Lixa dealt with security forces. Behind them, plasma fire lit up the narrow passages like deadly fireworks. "Central Communications Hub, 20 meters ahead," Marcus called back, checking his handheld scanner. The relay station's own systems were working against its defenders now. Lixa had convinced the computer that they were authorized maintenance personnel responding to a critical system failure. They burst through the final access hatch into the communication center's heart. Banks of quantum processors hummed with contained energy while holographic displays showed data streams from across the galaxy. 3 technicians looked up in shock from their workstations. "Don't move." The senior technician, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, reached for an alarm panel. "Security breach in." "Wait," Marcus said, raising his hands but not his weapon. "Listen to me. How long have you been stationed here?" The woman hesitated, confusion flickering across her face. 2 years. "Why?" Have you ever seen the classified intelligence reports? The real casualty figures? The suppressed diplomatic communications? I don't know what you're talking about, she replied, but uncertainty crept into her voice. Marcus pulled out the data storage device containing the stolen files. Communications Specialist Third Class Sarah Chun. That's your name? According to your personnel file. We're probably related. Chen's common enough in the outer colonies. Behind him, energy weapons discharged as Zara held off pursuing security forces. Lixa knelt beside one of the main processing units, her crystalline skin interfacing directly with the station's quantum cores. Upload starting, Lixa announced, her voice strained with concentration. But their security systems are adapting faster than I anticipated. I need more time. Sarah, Marcus continued urgently, you've been routing communications for the fleet for 2 years. Haven't you ever wondered why certain messages get classified above your clearance level? Why some battle reports don't match the casualty lists? The technician stared at him, her internal conflict evident. Around her, her colleagues watched with growing uncertainty. These weren't hardened soldiers. They were support personnel who joined the military for steady pay and technical training. Show her, Marcus said to Lixa. The main holographic display flickered, then filled with classified documents. Real intelligence assessments showing successful human-alien cooperation. Economic analyses proving the war was bankrupting both sides while enriching military contractors. Video recordings of peace negotiations being sabotaged by extremist factions on both sides. Sarah Chen's face went white as she absorbed the information. This can't be real. They wouldn't. We wouldn't. It's all real, Marcus said gently. Every document is authenticated with command-level security codes. The war isn't about survival or expansion. It's about control. As long as both sides stay afraid, those in power stay essential. One of the other technicians, a young man barely out of training, stepped forward. The Kepler massacre last month. We processed the after-action reports. Command said it was a military victory, but the casualty numbers. He swallowed hard. 90% civilians. On both sides. Help us, Marcus pleaded. Help us show people the truth. Sarah Chun looked at her colleagues, then at the damning evidence filling their displays. Her hands shook as she moved to her workstation. What do you need? Access to the emergency broadcast network, Lixa said, her voice tight with strain. I can interface with your quantum cores, but I need administrative privileges to override the safety protocols. That's treason, one of the other technicians whispered. No, Sarah replied, her fingers flying over her controls. Treason is letting this continue. She looked up at Marcus. My brother died at Tau Ceti. They told us he was defending humanity from monsters. But if these files are real, they're real, Marcus confirmed. And your brother died fighting people who just wanted their children to be safe, same as he did. The station shuddered as the pursuing cruiser's weapons found their range. Emergency lighting bathed the communications center in pulsing red, while damage reports cascaded across secondary displays. Hull breaches on levels 7 through 9, Sarah reported, her training taking over despite the emotional revelation. We've got maybe 10 minutes before structural collapse. Upload at 60%, Lixa announced. Her crystalline skin blazed with energy as she poured more of herself into the station's systems. But they're jamming our outgoing transmissions. I need to boost the signal somehow. Zara's voice crackled over the intercom from her position guarding the access tunnels. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. I count 15 security personnel converging on your position, and I'm running out of ammunition. Marcus studied the station's power distribution systems, his engineering background finally proving useful. The fusion reactor. If we can reroute primary power through the transmission array, we might be able to punch through their jamming. That would overload every system on the station, Sarah protested. We'd have total power failure within minutes. Then we'd better hope minutes are enough, Marcus replied grimly. He moved to the reactor control station, his hands dancing across unfamiliar controls. The fusion reactor's output began climbing toward redline levels as he systematically disabled safety protocols that had kept the station operational for 5 years. Insane, one of the technicians muttered, but he didn't try to stop them. Upload at 80%, Lixa reported. Her voice was growing weaker as the massive data transfer demanded more of her mental energy. The files are too large. The encryption is fighting me. Then don't encrypt them, Marcus said. Broadcast everything in the clear. Let anyone with a receiver pick up the signal. That's... Sarah paused, understanding dawning on her face. That's brilliant. Every ship, every station, every colony with basic communication equipment would receive the data automatically. They couldn't stop it, couldn't suppress it. Do it, Marcus ordered. Lixa's crystalline patterns shifted, flowing like liquid light across her skin. Initiating clear broadcast. No encryption, maximum spread spectrum. Every device in a 50 light-year radius will receive this data. The station's main reactor whined as its output climbed past safe operating parameters. Warning klaxons joined the chaos of battle sounds echoing through the corridors. Through the communications center's viewport, Marcus could see one of the pursuing cruisers moving into attack position, its main weapons charging for a killing blow. Upload at 95%, Lixa gasped. Almost there. Contact lost with security teams 7 through 12, Sarah reported, monitoring internal communications. That Nereid of yours is a one-woman army. She's not mine, Marcus corrected automatically. She's her own person. That's the whole point. The fusion reactor's containment field fluctuated dangerously as power output reached critical levels. Emergency systems tried to engage, but Marcus had disabled them all. Either they would succeed in broadcasting the truth, or the station would become a brief star in the darkness. Upload complete, Lixa announced triumphantly, then collapsed against the quantum processing unit. Broadcasting now on all frequencies. Emergency channels, civilian networks, military communications, everything. The main display showed transmission indicators across hundreds of star systems lighting up as relay stations automatically forwarded the emergency broadcast. Within minutes, the suppressed files would reach every corner of human space and beyond. We did it, Sarah whispered, staring at the spreading network of green indicators. Everyone will know. The station shuddered again as the lead cruiser's main guns found their mark. Structural beams groaned under stress while atmosphere began venting through multiple hull breaches. But the transmission continued, protected by power directly from the overloading reactor. Marcus helped Lixa to her feet, supporting her weakened form. Through their mental connection, he felt her satisfaction mixed with profound exhaustion. Can you move? I think so, she replied aloud, though her crystalline skin had dimmed to barely visible patterns. But Marcus, there's something else. Something I found in their files while I was uploading. What? Her silver eyes met his with deep sadness. Project Tabula Rasa. Complete xenocide protocols for 17 species, including my people and Zara's. They're not planning to win this war. They're planning to end it by eliminating everyone who isn't human. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Genocide on an unprecedented scale, dressed up as military strategy. How long? 6 months. Maybe less. The preliminary strikes have already begun. Marcus felt something break inside him. Not despair, but the last remnants of his loyalty to the species that had birthed him. Humanity had become something monstrous, and he was no longer sure it deserved to survive. But then he looked around the communications center at Sarah Chun and her colleagues, people who had chosen truth over comfortable lies when it mattered. At Zara, still fighting impossible odds to protect them all. At Lixa, who had nearly killed herself to expose the corruption eating at both their civilizations. Maybe species didn't deserve anything. Maybe only individuals did, and they had to earn it through their choices. Then we make sure everyone knows about that too, he said. Sarah, can you access Project Tabula Rasa's files? The communications specialist nodded grimly, her fingers already working at her console. Broadcasting supplemental data now. Genocide protocols, target lists, preliminary strike reports, all of it. the reactor's containment field collapsed. For a moment that lasted forever, Marcus felt the station dissolving around them in a cascade of pure energy. The fusion reaction that had powered their rebellion consumed everything it had created, turning metal and flesh and hope into fundamental particles. But in that moment of dissolution, as quantum fire reached toward them with final embrace, Marcus felt Lix's mind touch his one last time. Through their connection, he sensed something impossible, signals from across the galaxy as their broadcast reached its destinations. Fleets standing down, colonies establishing contact with former enemies, people making different choices. The war wasn't over. The powerful would try to maintain their grip, and many would die before peace truly came. But the lie that fed the conflict had been exposed, and truth, once released, was harder to kill than any army. Marcus Chun died knowing he had finally fought for something worth the price. The communication relay station Hermes 7 became a brief star in the darkness, its light carrying a message that would reshape the galaxy. That courage could bloom in the most unlikely hearts, that compassion could cross any divide, and that sometimes the greatest victory came not from choosing sides, but from choosing to see enemies as people worthy of freedom. In the end, a man given the chance to claim ownership of another being had chosen instead to free them all.